consent it needs to be reserved for the violation of one's body. But one of the ways I hear consent getting talked about that is erroneous is when somebody does not keep a relationship agreement. Let's say the relationship agreement is we're only going to have sex with each other, and somebody goes off and has sex with somebody else. Doesn't tell them, they don't negotiate it ahead of time. They pretend as if they've kept this agreement. That's not non-consent. That's exploitation. Consent and non-exploitation get confused with each other. And I really think it's important to maintain consent is the violation of one's body, where exploitation is a relational violation. You're using power, which is a relational experience, to gain something you want sexually. Exploitation is not sexual health. If you're interested in sexual health, it's not okay just because it's consensual. We live in a culture that primarily is exploitive, illiterate. We don't teach people about exploitation. When I use this word and introducing it to people around the sex principles, and that they've actually violated this principle quite a bit, exploitation, particularly for the men I worked with, they hated this word. They hated having to take responsibility that I've been exploitive. I've exploited people I love. I've exploited my family. I've exploited my relations. I've exploited my workplace. I've exploited my friends or whoever. It's a difficult thing for somebody to look at and say, I used the power I had over you to do something sexually that I wanted. We need to know it when we see it. And we need to be able to say that's exploitation. We call it so many other things. You're a cheater. In my family, my grandfather was a womanizer. That was the story. That was the label he was given. He was a womanizer, right? So we have all these words, but we don't say they exploited people for sex. Now, sexual violence and sexual abuse, the most common place it happens is in the family home. So how do we get this idea that your home is not only supposed to be free of sexual non-consent, it's also supposed to be free of exploitation, when that's usually where these things are going on? So the more we deny non-consent and the more we deny exploitation as our own history and the history of family members or the intergenerational stories that go with non-consent in families or relatives or your community, the more we're unprepared to deal with the exploitation that happens between people who love each other. So a non-exploitive choice is when you choose to not exploit consciously, even though you could get away with it. So this is the best you get at non-exploitation is getting better and better at not choosing to exploit. And now how are you going to use that power? Are you going to use it responsibly, respectfully, lovingly, humanly, social justice-wise, human rights? There's a lot of other factors once just the consent's out there. And that's where all the exploitation and non-exploitation comes in.